Blood. My mother says the word as if it's a curse. She has never called me that before. The irony tastes bitter on my tongue as I stare at her across our kitchen table. Her voice is tight and trembling. My father, arms crossed, nods along. My older brother and sister hover behind them, their eyes gleaming with something between greed and triumph. Blood. Suddenly, that's all I am to them. Not their daughter, not their sister, just blood. And only because my blood, belonging to another family, has unexpectedly made me rich, they wouldn't even say the word before. For years, I was not really one of us, the adopted child they took in but never truly embraced. Now, in the strangest twist of fate, my biological grandfather, a man I've never even met, has left me his entire estate. And overnight, the family that shamed and shunned me has decided that blood is what matters after all. My mother's lips are pressed so thin they're almost white. "We're your family," she hisses, fingers drumming on the table's oak surface. "We raised you. We fed and clothed you. You owe us everything. And you think you can run off with your blood money without sharing a cent?" Across from her I sit silent. My hands are folded in my lap to hide their trembling. I look down at the swirls in the wood grain of the table, the same table where I sat for countless family dinners, feeling like a ghost. The word blood still hangs in the air, heavy and accusing. I wonder if they realize how cruelly absurd it is to finally acknowledge our lack of biological connection only now, when it suits them, when it might profit them. I open my mouth, but no words come. A part of me wants to scream, "You've never treated me like family. Why should I treat you any differently now?" Another part of me, a quieter, deeply buried part, still desperately, wishes this confrontation weren't happening at all. That maybe, just maybe, they could have loved me for me, not for what my genes or inheritance could give them. My brother shifts his weight, scraping a chair out to sit. He gives me a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Come on, sis," he says, his tone falsely sweet. "We're family. Doesn't family mean anything to you? Or is it only your precious blood relatives that count?" Family. I almost laugh at the sheer hypocrisy of it. Now I'm sis, now I'm family. This is the same brother who once stood up in front of our entire high school class and announced that I wasn't his sister and never would be, telling everyone within earshot that I would never be a part of his family. I remember that day with startling clarity, the way my face burned as dozens of our classmates turned to stare at me, the way he looked right through me as if I were nothing. He did it not just once, but over and over again, reminding me every chance he got that I didn't belong. I lift my eyes to meet his now. That memory gives me a shard of strength. Family? He forfeited the right to use that word with me long ago. My voice, when I finally find it, comes out soft but steady. Family, I echo. Is that what we are? My gaze moves from my brother's face to my mother's and then my father's. You taught me a long time ago that I wasn't truly part of this family. Remember, no one speaks, but I see my mother flinch as if I had thrown a punch. My father's brow furrows. Perhaps they didn't expect me to fight back. Maybe they assumed I'd be the same meek girl who used to lower her head and say sorry whenever they accused me of ingratitude. But I am not that girl anymore. Still, under my calm tone, my heart is pounding. I feel the past rising up around me, years of pain and loneliness flooding this sunny California kitchen. I need to steady myself. I close my eyes for a moment and inhale. In the darkness behind my eyelids, time unwinds itself. I was 4 years old when I first learned I was adopted. At least, that's the first time I remember hearing the word adopted and realizing it applied to me. Before that, I called my adoptive parents mommy and daddy like any child would. I assumed I was just like my older brother and sister, but children always sense the unspoken things. I think I knew in some unformed way that I was different, that I didn't quite fit. I have a memory. I'm small, maybe 4 or 5, peeking around the doorway of the living room while my mother and grandmother talk in low voices. They don't realize I can hear them. "She's not ours by blood," my grandmother is saying, a note of disapproval in her tone. She's stirring sugar into her tea with quick, irritated clinks. I just worry. I don't feel the same connection. It's Different with the others. My mother responds in a hushed whisper I can barely catch. I know, Mum. But what could we do? I owed it to Angela. She was my best friend. I promised I'd take care of her baby if anything ever happened. And when the accident... Her voice trails off. I don't understand everything, not the full weight of those words, but I understand enough. The tiny knot that's always been in my chest tightens, not ours by blood. Owed it to Angela. I piece it together. Angela was my biological mother's name. They have never hidden that from me. They just rarely spoke of her. She died in a car accident not long after I was born, and my adoptive parents took me in. A noble deed, everyone said. A good deed. But now, listening unseen, I hear the unfiltered truth. They did it out of obligation, not out of joy or love at my arrival, but out of duty to a dead friend. My grandmother's words confirm what I have always felt, radiating from her cool stares and half-hearted pats on my head. I'm different. I'm not really her grandchild in her eyes, not like my siblings. I remember pressing my small hand against my chest that day, feeling the dull thud of my heartbeat. Was my blood, that mysterious substance adults seem to care so much about, somehow wrong? I had imagined blood was all the same red, but to them, my blood marked me as separate. Even at 5, I felt a flush of shame, as if I'd done something wrong without knowing what it was. From then on, I paid closer attention. The differences were subtle, but they were everywhere. In the countless family photos lining our hallway walls, my face appeared less frequently than my brother Ryan's or my sister Nicole's. There were baby pictures of Ryan on a soft blanket, Nicole's kindergarten finger painting proudly framed, but only a single small photo of me as a toddler tucked in the corner of a collage frame. I noticed it, even if I was too young to articulate why it made me feel lonely. It's not that they never took photos of me, it's that those photos never seemed to make it into the albums or onto the walls. I was conspicuously absent from the visual narrative of our family's life. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it didn't matter. Often I pretended not to care, but the exclusion cut deep. Once, when I was about 8, my maternal grandmother, the one who called me not blood, commented on a new set of framed pictures in our living room. "Oh, what a lovely photo of all my grandchildren," she said, smiling at the image of Ryan, and Nicole flanking her at some holiday gathering. I was not in that photo. I had been the one taking it. Grandma's eyes flickered over to me and then back to the frame. "It's a shame we don't have one with everyone," she added thinly, by which she meant me. My mother pursed her lips and said nothing. The implied message was clear. I wasn't important enough to insist on including. They weren't overtly cruel, not in those early years. Much of the hurt came from what they didn't do. The hugs that lasted a second shorter than the ones my siblings got. The way my mother's face lit up when Nicole mastered a piano piece versus the polite smile when I showed her my own clumsy crayon drawings. I learned to watch, to measure love in the smallest of units. A glance, a pat on the back, a mention at the dinner table. By those metrics, I was always coming up short. Small injustices became the fabric of my everyday life. When I was 9, I remember studying all week for the school spelling bee. I was determined to make them proud. I ended up placing second, tripping on the word inheritance, a word steeped in irony as I think of it now. I came home with my little runner-up, ribbon beaming, expecting at least a warm congratulations. Instead, I found the kitchen empty. My family had gone out to celebrate my brother's Little League Championship game victory. They had forgotten it was the day of my competition, despite my excited reminders at breakfast. I sat on the porch, steps until they returned, my ribbon clutched tightly in hand. When their car pulled in, I ran to my father and proudly held up the ribbon. He patted my shoulder and said, "That's nice. Listen, could you help bring in the pizza from the car?" Later that night, I overheard my siblings snickering about my spelling bee. Second place in a tiny school contest? Who cares? Ryan scoffed. "It's not like it's a real trophy." Nicole giggled. I crept away before they could see me, cheeks burning. It wasn't just that they dismissed my achievement. It was the feeling that I was dismissed, time and again. My mother would often tell me to be grateful. that I was lucky to have been adopted into a good home. She reminded me of it, especially on days when I dared to express hurt or anger. If Ryan snatched a toy from me and I cried, Mom would scold me, "Stop that right now. We gave you a home." When we didn't have to, the least you can do is behave. We didn't have to. Those words struck me like a physical blow. It was as if my very existence in the family was conditional, a benevolent favor I should be forever thankful for, regardless of how I was treated. On the surface, we might have seemed like a normal family. We went to church on Sundays. We had birthday parties and BBQs. And I played the part of a happy daughter, because I craved acceptance so badly. There were even moments of genuine warmth, mostly with my dad, who on rare occasions treated me to an ice cream or ruffled my hair in a way that felt almost loving. Those moments were crumbs, but I clung to them, storing them away like a starving child hides scraps of food. Yet the favoritism towards my siblings only grew more blatant as we got older. My parents had always doted on Ryan, the firstborn son, and Nicole, their only biological daughter. A few years after adopting me, miraculously, they had another child, my younger brother David, which felt like a final nail in the coffin of my hopes. David was the baby of the family, the unexpected blessing. They lavished him with the kind of affection I had only dreamed of. I remember watching my mother hold toddler David in her lap, kissing the top of his curly head as he played with her necklace, and feeling an ache so deep it made me silently retreat to my room, where I cried into my pillow from sheer shame and jealousy. I was the perpetual middle child, and an adopted one at that, neither the celebrated eldest, the cherished only girl, Nicole, nor the pampered baby. I tried to be invisible, or else overly useful. I did chores without being asked. I got good grades. Maybe if I was good enough. I thought they would finally see me as one of their own. But good was never good enough. When I was 12, Nicole turned 16 and received a brand new car as a birthday gift. It was a used sedan, but still, a car outright, keys tied with a red bow. She squealed with joy, and my parents beamed, thrilled to have surprised her. I clapped and smiled, genuinely happy for my sister, but also wondering what milestone might earn me something similar. 4 years later, when I turned 16, I received a second-hand bicycle that one of my dad's co-workers was getting rid of. "Since you don't have a car, this will be good for getting around," my dad said matter-of-factly. My brother Ryan, home from college, laughed under his breath because the bike had a little basket and bell like a kid's bike. My parents didn't notice my humiliation. There was no red bow, no celebratory surprise, just a practical afterthought. Looking back, the bike was still a gift, and I was grateful to have transportation. But it was the disparity that stung. I pedaled that bike to school while Nicole drove off in her car, and I told myself stories to make it okay. Maybe they couldn't afford another car. Yet the next year, when David turned 16, Dad's old pickup truck was handed down to him with much fanfare. So they had something to give. Little things, little things. They added up into a mountain of evidence that I was valued less. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when the emotional abuse crossed a line, because it was so woven into daily life. The psychological toll of always being second class in your own home wears you down over time. I became quiet, withdrawn. At school, I had few friends because I never invited anyone over. I couldn't trust that my family wouldn't somehow embarrass or expose me. Better to keep a distance. If I was lonely at home and lonely at school, at least the pain was consistent. It was familiar. There were, however, 2 friends I managed to keep close, Melissa and Jason, my best friends since middle school. They knew my family was strict, which is how I explained away the odd rules and the way I always had to rush home to babysit my younger brother or finish chores. But even they didn't know the full extent of how my family treated me. I was too ashamed to tell them, who would understand. Instead, I often made jokes at my own expense. Dry, bitter humor became my shield. If I casually said, "Oh, my family would probably leave me by the roadside if they could, haha," my friends would roll their eyes as if I were exaggerating. They couldn't fathom it was half true. Humor was a coping mechanism I learned early. I recall one Christmas when I was about 14. We were opening presents around the tree. My siblings tore into lavish gifts, a new gaming console for David, designer clothes for Nicole, noise-cancelling headphones for Ryan. I unwrapped a modest box to find a generic brand sweater, 2 sizes too large. I mustered a grin and quipped, "Just what I wanted, a wearable blanket." My father chuckled absently, not catching the edge in my voice. My mother shot me a glance, one that told me to mind my attitude. I spent the rest of the morning diligently wearing that oversized sweater, sweating by the fire, playing the role of the grateful daughter. Later, alone in my room, I let the bitterness seep out in tears and writing. I had begun journaling by then, pages and pages of poured-out hurt that no one would ever see. Sometimes I would write imaginary stories where I was born into a different family, or where I had never been adopted at all. Fantasies in which my biological mother had lived and raised me herself, or some long-lost relative came to claim me. They were childish daydreams, but they helped me fall asleep on nights when the weight of rejection felt too heavy on my chest. One of the heaviest blows came when I was 16, old enough to truly understand cruelty, and still young enough to be devastated by it. By then, Ryan had graduated and Nicole was in college, leaving me at home with our parents and little David. I thought perhaps with the older two gone, I might finally get a share of parental attention. For a short while it seemed almost true. Mom asked about my day a bit more. Dad nodded at my report card with something like approval. I grasped at those straws of hope. Then came the incident. The incident in many ways that defined my later, say teenage years. It was lunchtime at school. I was a junior, and Ryan, who was only a year older, had come back to campus for some reason, an alumni event, I think, and to visit his girlfriend who was still a senior. We overlapped 1 year in high school. That year he had ignored me in the halls, of course, but on this day he did far worse. I was sitting with Melissa and Jason in the cafeteria when I heard a commotion by the podium where the principal sometimes made announcements. To my shock, I saw Ryan up there, charming, confident Ryan, tapping a spoon against a glass as if giving a toast. It was some silly senior prank, I learned later. They had goaded him to say something since he'd been popular when he was a student. He raised his voice loud enough to carry across the huge room. "Hey, everybody. You all know me, I'm Ryan," he began, flashing a winning grin. A few teachers half-heartedly moved to stop him, but curiosity kept them listening. My stomach did a little flip of dread. What is he doing? I sat frozen as his eyes scanned the crowd, and then, unbelievably, they locked onto mine. "I just want to clear something up once and for all," Ryan called out. "See that girl over there?" He pointed directly at me. Every face in the cafeteria turned to find me in the sea of students. My heart stopped. Melissa whispered, "Oh my God," beside me. I wanted to sink into the floor. "That's my adopted sister," Ryan announced, the word adopted echoing off the tiled walls. "Just letting you all know she's not really my sister. Never will be." He gave a mock sad shrug as if to say, "Hate to break it to you." A few people laughed in confusion or disbelief. I felt a hot prickle of tears and forced myself not to blink. I would not cry, not here. Ryan wasn't done. He leaned in as if confiding a secret, though his voice was plenty loud. "So if she's been telling anyone in here that we're related, we're not. Not by blood. She's just some charity case my parents took in. She's not actually family." His eyes bored into mine, a cruel challenge, and then he delivered the final twist of the knife. "So, don't feel like you have to pretend or anything. I sure don't." He clinked the glass again. "That's all. Enjoy your lunch." He stepped down, leaving a stunned silence that quickly exploded into murmurs. I sat as if turned to stone. I couldn't breathe. My face was burning with humiliation. Jason had jumped to his feet, ready to charge at Ryan, while Melissa grabbed his arm and also mine, her face white with shock. "What an asshole," Jason spat, eyes blazing. "Are you okay? Say something." But I couldn't speak. It was as though Ryan had reached inside and plucked out my voice in front of everyone. I ran. I bolted from the cafeteria. Vision blurred with tears, I could no longer hold back. I hid in the girls' bathroom, locking myself in a stall, my hand clamped over my mouth to muffle the sobs. It felt like the end of the world. In that moment, I hated Ryan more than I thought it was possible to hate anyone, not just for what he said, but for stripping away the last veneer of normalcy I had. He took my deepest insecurity, that I wasn't truly part of my family, and broadcast it to the whole school. He turned my life into a cruel joke. The repercussions at school were mixed. Some classmates avoided me out of awkwardness after witnessing the scene, others whispered behind my back. A few kind souls, acquaintances really, told me to ignore him, that it wasn't true, that I was as much a part of my family as anyone. But their well-meaning words rang hollow, because it was true in a sense, wasn't it? Not the part about not being family. Adoption should mean I was family, but the part about how he and my parents saw me. He only said out loud what I knew they felt privately. I was the charity case, the burden, the not really daughter. At home I expected, foolishly, that my parents would be furious at Ryan for what he'd done, that they would punish him, defend me, finally show some outrage on my behalf. I imagined my mother grabbing him by the ear and saying, "How dare you? Apologize to your sister." I craved that so badly it was like a physical thirst. It didn't happen. When I tearfully told my mother what Ryan had done, he certainly didn't mention it. She pursed her lips, then sighed, as if I were the one causing trouble. "I don't understand why he would do that," she said, frowning, but there was no heat in her voice. She seemed more concerned with the fact that I was making a fuss now. My father's reaction, well, that was immature of him. But you know how teenagers are, and that was mostly that. Ryan got a mild talking to in private. I heard murmurs behind closed doors, but he never apologized. In fact, he doubled down. A week later, when I confronted him directly, cornering him in the garage, screaming, "Why do you hate me?" He looked me up and down with icy disdain and said, "I don't hate you, I nothing you, and I meant what I said. You're not my family. Get over it." Then he shoulder-checked past me and was gone. I told my mother I couldn't just pretend nothing happened, not this time. His words had cut me to the bone, and I was struggling to go to school and face people. She became irritated, defensive of her golden son. "That's still my kid, and it was his stupid high school prank," she snapped. "He gave us our first grandbaby, and I'm not going to hold a childish outburst against him forever." I remember that phrasing so vividly, as if producing a grandchild somehow absolved him of being a monster to me. She did not raise her voice. She said it coldly, crossing her arms. It was clear where her loyalty lay, not with me. Never with me. That night I truly understood the depth of my mother's indifference to my suffering. I was a disturbance to her, an inconvenience. She didn't care that Ryan's actions had left me shattered. She only cared that I was distancing myself from him and causing family tension by not just letting it go. That realization settled on my chest like a slab of concrete. After that, something in me cracked. I stopped trying to win my mother's love. I stopped trying to belong to them at all. I retreated into survival mode, just biding my time until I could leave that house. I focused on what I could control, my grades, my after-school job at Key, the library shelving books, peaceful hours among dust and silence, a refuge. I saved every dollar I earned, dreaming of the day I'd go to college and never look back. Still, even as I tried to pull away emotionally, I longed for someone in the family to see and hear me. Surprisingly, it was often my little brother David, only 4 years my junior but in some ways so much younger, who gave me glimpses of genuine affection. He loved when I read him bedtime stories or helped him with homework. Sometimes when no one was around, he'd crawl into my lap like he did as a tiny child and ask me questions about the stars or dinosaurs, and I'd answer as best I could, cherishing the warmth of his small body against mine. In those moments I felt like a real sister. I felt needed, but even David absorbed the attitudes around him as he grew. By the time he was a preteen, he parroted our mother's subtle dismissiveness. If we argued over the TV remote, he'd sneer, "Why are you even here? You're not really part of us." The first time he said that, I slapped him, a rare flash of violence from me that shocked us both. He ran off crying to Mom, and of course I was reprimanded. I tried to apologize to David later for the slap, and he shrugged, saying he was just mad I wouldn't let him watch his show. I gently asked where he got the idea that I wasn't part of the family, and he mumbled, "I don't know, it's just true, right?" I mean, you're adopted. As if it were an immutable law of nature that this made me less. I told him quietly that I loved him, and that being adopted didn't change that. He squirmed away, embarrassed. The indoctrination was complete. Even the one person I thought I could influence had decided I was other. There were so many small heartbreaks along the way, it's impossible to list them all. The time my father introduced me to a colleague of his, not as my daughter, but pointedly as the girl we adopted. The time my aunt, my father's sister, refused to take me for a weekend along with Nicole because handling 3 kids is too much. But I later found out she did take Ryan and Nicole to a water park. I was simply excluded. The times I overheard family friends saying how saintly my parents were for taking in someone else's child, and my parents basking in that praise rather than correcting them that I was their child. Each incident piled on layers of hurt and taught me one loud, clear message. You are lucky we even accept you this much. You are not truly one of us. By the time I was nearing high school graduation, I was both eager and anxious to discuss college plans with my parents. College, that beacon of freedom, was around the corner, and I had worked hard academically, hoping to get into a good university. I knew money was an issue to consider. My family was upper middle class, nothing extravagant, but they had comfortably paid for my older siblings' educations. Ryan had gone to a state university on my parents' dime. Nicole was in a private college. They were helping her too. So when the acceptance letters arrived, including one from a prestigious school on the East Coast that I desperately wanted to attend, I screwed up my courage one evening and approached my parents in the living room. I remember standing there, the thick envelope in my hand, while they watched the evening news. "Mom, Dad, can we talk about college?" I asked. My voice sounded small to my own ears. My mother muted the TV. My father muted his expression. It went blank, guarded. I realized they had been expecting this, maybe even dreading it. "I got into Langston University," I said. "And also, State U. I haven't decided, but I wanted to ask about financial help. What can I expect?" I tried to sound mature, responsible. My heart was pounding. I knew better than to assume anything with them. Still, I had some faint hope that maybe they'd be proud and supportive, at least financially, if not emotionally. Langston was an Ivy League equivalent. My guidance counselor had been ecstatic for me. My parents exchanged a glance. My mother sighed. "We need to be honest with you," she said. "There won't be any college fund for you. We don't have money for that." I blinked, not quite processing. "What? But you paid for Ryan and Nicole." My voice came out hushed with shock. Dad cleared his throat. "That was before. Things are different now. We've had some expenses." "Different? How?" I pressed. I could feel a tremor in my limbs, a mix of panic and anger starting to rise. "You always said we should all go to college. You planned for it." Mom pursed her lips. "We did plan. But by the time you came along, by the time I came along," I echoed. I was the disruption, the unplanned one, the outsider. "Is this because I'm adopted?" I asked bluntly, my face growing hot. "Am I not your real child in this either?" They bristled simultaneously. "Don't be ridiculous," my father snapped. "Of course you're our child, but college is a privilege, not a right. Many kids have to pay their own way. We've simply run out of funds after your siblings. It's just bad timing." "Bad timing," I repeated, tasting bitterness. They had managed to cover every expense for the older 3, including graduate school for Ryan, and even purchasing a condo for Nicole when she graduated. I knew these things, they weren't secret. But now they looked at me as if I was selfish for expecting the same. Mum's voice was cool. "Your biological mother didn't leave any money for your college, dear, so you'll have to handle it yourself, just like most people do." I stared at her, stunned that she would invoke Angela, my birth mom, as an excuse, as if a dead woman could have predicted or provided for this, as if it wasn't their responsibility at all. It was such a stark confirmation of how they viewed me, a separate entity, someone else's child they had raised, but ultimately not theirs to invest in. My throat tightened. I gathered my courage. "If I were your biological child, you wouldn't be doing this," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "You'd find a way. You always did for them. You bought Nicole a condo this year, but for me, nothing. It's hard to believe that's just coincidence. Dad's eyes hardened. Careful. You're sounding very entitled right now. Entitled, my voice cracked on the word. Anger flared in me, bright and sudden. You promised to treat me like your daughter. How is it entitled to expect to be treated the same as the others? How? Mom held up a hand sharply. Stop. We don't need your permission to spend our money how we choose. We have supported you all these years, given you everything you needed. Just because we can't pay for your college doesn't mean we love you any less, and it doesn't give you the right to accuse us of favoritism. I let out a short, incredulous laugh. It's exactly favoritism, I shouted, the dam. Finally breaking. You paid for everyone else. You didn't even tell me until I asked her, were you ever going to? Or were you just hoping I wouldn't get into a good school so it wouldn't come up? Watch your tone, young lady, Dad warned. His face had grown red. We took you in. There it is, I interrupted bitterly. You took me in. Something I should be forever grateful for, right? No matter how unfairly I'm treated, my heart was hammering out of my chest. So many years of swallowed feelings rose like bile in my throat. I am your child, or I was supposed to be, but you've made it clear I'm not. Not really. So, fine, I'll figure out college on my own. But don't expect me to pretend this is okay. It's not, it's cruel. My mother's eyes were wide. She wasn't used to me talking back with such ferocity. My father looked as if I'd slapped him. Then his expression curdled into anger. After all we've done for you, that's how you speak to us? He said in a low voice. We welcomed you into our home, fed you, raised you, and you stand here and call us cruel? You're acting like an ungrateful, entitled brat. That word again, entitled. It felt like a slap across the face. I was so furious I could hardly breathe. Expecting to be treated equally isn't being a brat, I seethed. You promised my mum, my real. Mom, you'd take care of me. Do you think she'd be okay with how you've done that? With how you've made me feel all these years? My mother's hand suddenly flew out and struck my cheek. The crack of it froze us both. She had never hit me before. My face stung and tears sprung to my eyes unbidden. We were both shocked by her action, but she recovered first. She drew herself up, trembling with rage or fear or both. You will not speak to us that way, she said, voice icy. Not after everything. This discussion is over. If you think we're so terrible, maybe you should start making your own. Way as soon as you graduate. In fact, that's a good idea. I touched my burning cheek and stared at her. What do you mean? My father answered, quiet and cold. It means you'll be 18. An adult. If you can't appreciate what you've been given here, perhaps you should find out what it's like to be on your own. I understood then. They were kicking me out, or at least threatening to. My stomach dropped, but a strange relief washed over me too, mingled with the hurt. The worst had happened. They admitted they didn't want me. Perhaps they'd wanted to say it for years. I left the living room in a daze, their voices rising behind me as they began to bicker with each other. I caught phrases like too hard on her from Dad, and had to be said from Mom, but I didn't care who was defending whom anymore. I went to my room, closed the door, and slid down to the floor. My cheek still throbbed. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't allowed myself to do in a long time. I dialed the number of my old case social worker, whose card I had tucked away. It went to voicemail. It was after hours. I didn't leave a message. I was operating on hurt and adrenaline. Next, I called Melissa, voice shaking, and told her everything. She insisted I come stay with her at her mom's house that night. I refused at first, afraid of causing more trouble, but by midnight, after another few rounds of fighting with my parents, I had packed a duffel bag and slipped out. I wish I could say my parents tried to stop me, or that there was some dramatic scene, but in truth they barely said goodbye. My mother watched from the doorway with her arms crossed. My father muttered, "Don't do anything stupid. Call us when you cool off." I think he couldn't fully commit to the idea of me leaving, not in that moment. But my mother's face was set. She had effectively disowned me right then, even if the actual words weren't spoken. I moved in with Melissa and her mom for the remaining few months of high school. There was gossip among family and neighbors. I heard that my parents told everyone I had become rebellious and unmanageable, and I chose to run away because I didn't like their rules. I didn't bother to correct the record. What was the point? I excelled in school despite the chaos. Perhaps out of spite, I accepted the offer to Langston University, the expensive one, determined to find a way. I applied for scholarships and loans, and with the help of my guidance counselor and Melissa's wonderful mother, who co-signed a private loan, I scraped together the means to attend. I left California for the East Coast that fall, not looking back. The day I flew out, I did send a text to my parents. I'm leaving for college. Thank you for raising me. I wish things could have been different. It was as close to an olive branch as I could manage, and also an acknowledgement that I was, indeed, grateful they hadn't left me to foster care or worse. Despite everything, I needed to say it. Only my father responded hours later with a single line, "Good luck, let us know when you get there safely." My mother never replied. I arrived in a small New England town utterly alone, yet freer than I'd ever been. I dove into college head first, classes, 2 part-time jobs, making friends who slowly chipped away at my walls. Away from my family's shadow, I found I could laugh more easily, trust people a little more. But I rarely spoke of my family. When classmates asked about my parents, I'd simply say, "Oh, we're not that close," and quickly change the subject. It was too complicated, too painful to explain. I saw my adoptive family only once in the next few years. It was for David's high school graduation, after many internal debates. By then I was 20 and home for summer, working nearby. David actually called me himself, one of the few times he ever had, and said he'd like me to come to his ceremony. Despite everything, I loved him, and I decided to go for his sake. The reunion with my parents was chilly but polite. They treated me like a distant cousin or a family acquaintance. My mother commented that I'd lost weight. I hadn't particularly, and that college life must be agreeing with me in a tone that implied the opposite. My father shook my hand. Ryan and Nicole didn't even show up to their kid brothers' graduation, so at least I didn't have to face them. The event passed without drama. I gave David a gift, a fancy pen set he probably didn't want, and in return he gave me a surprisingly tight hug and whispered, "I miss you." It melted me a little. But when I left that evening, slipping away before the family celebratory dinner that I wasn't invited to, I knew I wouldn't voluntarily see my parents again for a long, long time. The wound was still too raw, and their frosty reception only rubbed salt in it. Over the next couple of years, I heard updates sporadically, through David's occasional texts or through Melissa's mom, who still lived in the same neighborhood. I learned that Ryan's wife had another baby. Nicole got engaged. The world at home kept spinning without me, and I was fine with that. I focused on building my own life. I even started therapy at the college counseling center, where for the first time I unloaded the full story of my upbringing to someone who listened with compassionate horror. The therapist said words that made me break down sobbing. She said, "You didn't deserve any of that. You did nothing wrong. They failed you." No one had ever said that to me. In my mind, I had always wondered if maybe I wasn't lovable enough, if maybe I really was the problem. Hearing otherwise was like balm on a burn. In one session, I remember tearfully asking, why would they adopt me if they were going to treat me like this? Why bring me into their family just to keep me at arm's length? The therapist shook her head. Sometimes people take actions for the wrong reasons, guilt, image, a savior complex, and they aren't actually prepared to love the person they bring into their home, she said gently. It's unfair and it's cruel, but it's not a reflection on your worth. They are the ones who failed, not you. They failed me, not the other way around. It took time. I'm still working on fully believing that, but I started to heal little by little. I even found myself building a chosen family, friends, mentors, people who valued me for who I was. By the time I turned 23, I had finished undergrad and was working toward a master's degree part-time while also working at a publishing house. I moved back to California for a job opportunity, but not to Orange County where I grew up. I settled in San Francisco, hours away from my adoptive parents, close enough that the same state lines contained us, far enough to feel safe. I had almost no contact with my adoptive family during that time, and then out of the blue I received a phone call that changed everything, though not in the way one might expect. It was an attorney's office reaching out. At first I panicked, thinking perhaps my parents were suing me for something. My Mind leaps to worst-case scenarios easily, courtesy of my upbringing. But the lawyer, a kindly woman named Linda, quickly explained my biological maternal grandfather had passed away. I didn't even know his name, let alone that he knew mine. Yet it turned out he had been quietly searching for me for years, once he learned of my existence. Angela, my birth mom, had been estranged from her family after my birth for complicated reasons I won't ever fully know. But apparently her father, my grandfather, regretted their falling out deeply, and upon her death, wanted to make things right in any way he could. According to Linda, he'd finally found my trail just a year before he died. He never reached out directly, perhaps fearing I'd reject him or perhaps because his health failed too quickly, but he altered his will to include me, actually, to favor me. In what felt like a fairy tale twist, he left virtually his entire estate to me, his unknown grandchild. It wasn't Bezos-level wealth, but it was far more than I'd ever imagined having. A house in upstate New York, some investments, and a not insignificant sum of money. He left token amounts to a few other relatives, whom I had never heard of, but the bulk was mine. I flew to New York in a daze to attend the will reading and handle the estate. I learned about the man who was my grandfather through the stories of distant relatives who showed up mainly to gawk and perhaps ingratiate themselves with me now. He had been a widower, a decorated Korean War vet, and a retired professor. He spent his final years corresponding with old friends, gardening, and heartbreakingly to me, looking at a single photo he had of my mother, Angela, and me as a newborn. That photo had been sent in a birth announcement before my mom's relationship with her parents fell apart. It was the only image he ever saw of me, until perhaps later when he might have gotten an update through a PI. The thought of that lonely old man gazing at a picture of infant me, wishing he knew me, broke something loose in my chest, a grief for the relationship we never got to have. And a realization. Someone biologically related to me had cared, even if from afar. Someone blood cared. I returned to California bewildered and humbled by this inheritance. I also felt a strange sense of validation, like maybe my roots mattered. After all, like I wasn't a discarded branch of a family tree, but instead the unexpected seed of new growth. It's hard to put into words. I cried for a man I never met and for the fact that he died not knowing that the granddaughter he sought had survived okay. I hoped he knew, somehow, that I was grateful. When news of the inheritance reached my adoptive family, and it did quicker than I expected, all hell broke loose. Later I discovered that a relative of my biological grandpa, a second cousin or something, disgruntled at being mostly left out of the will, had contacted my adoptive parents, directly perhaps to stir trouble or out of spite. In any case, a week after I got back from New York, I received a call from my mother for the first time in years. I shouldn't have answered, but at that moment I was still emotionally raw and off guard. Seeing Mom flash on my phone made my heart lurch. I answered, voice tentative. "Hello." She bypassed any greeting. "How dare you keep this from us?" she spat. Her tone was seething, accusatory. I was instantly transported back to my teenage years. My pulse skyrocketed. "Keep what from you?" I asked, genuinely confused for a second. "The money, the estate, your grandfather," she snarled. Or was that just a lie? "You think we wouldn't find out that Angela's father died and left you a fortune? Were you ever planning to tell us?" She practically barked the words. I didn't think it concerned you," I stammered truthfully. "We haven't spoken in years. Why would I—" She cut me off with a scornful laugh. "Not concern us. We raised you. And you come into a windfall, and it doesn't occur to you that you owe us. After everything, I stood in my little kitchen, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. A familiar numbness crept over me, a coping mechanism from long ago. I felt myself detach, observing the conversation from a distance as it unfolded. My mother's voice continued, sharp as daggers. "Your father and I sacrificed for you. We gave you a life. The least you could do is share a portion of that inheritance. We're struggling, you know. The economy—" I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. The sheer gall left me breathless. When I didn't respond immediately, she switched tactics, her voice turning eerily sweet, a tone that made my skin crawl. Sweetheart, listen. We are happy for you, truly. This could be a chance to mend things between us, don't you think? We're family. Blood isn't everything. We took you in and loved you as our own. Surely you haven't forgotten that. Headspun, how could she twist reality so effortlessly? Loved me as their own. My ears roared with the echo of entitled brat, of not really my sister, of should be grateful we took you in. I realized she was still talking, so I was thinking, since your grandfather's estate was substantial, perhaps you could help your brother and sister with their needs, and a little something for us to retire on finally. It'd be like giving back to the family that gave you so much. I found my voice at last. I need time to think, I managed, and hung up before she could say more. I collapsed onto my couch, shaking. The audacity was astounding, yet not surprising. It was perfectly in line with everything I knew about them. I just hadn't expected to ever hear it so plainly. They truly saw me as a resource, a thing to extract value from. Not once had she even said sorry or we miss you or any acknowledgement of how and why we became estranged. It was straight to money. For a couple days I didn't respond to any follow-ups. Oh, and there were follow-ups. Dozens of texts alternating between cajoling and guilt-tripping. One from my father. We're so proud you're doing well. Let's talk about how to make things right. One from Nicole, whom I hadn't heard from since I left. Heard the good news. Congrats. Don't forget who your real family is. The Gaul. Tav calling themselves my real family, when that was exactly what they'd always denied, was not lost on me. Even David reached out, though more timidly. Hey, Mom and Dad told me about your inheritance. Maybe you could come visit? I didn't know whether he actually missed me or was roped into this because he was still financially dependent on them. It became clear they wouldn't leave me alone. So that's how I find myself here, at our old house, sitting across from them at the kitchen table with that hated word blood still ringing in the air. I agreed to come down for a meeting. A family discussion, as Dad put it. Partly because I wanted closure, and partly because a tiny part of me still wanted to see if there was any humanity left in them regarding me. I had no intention of handing over money, but I suppose I needed to look them in the eye and see one last time if I meant anything more to them than a bank account. The answer is playing out in front of me. My mother's outburst of calling me blood was triggered when I calmly told them I was not giving any handouts. I had practiced a speech in the mirror beforehand. Something about how I planned to use the estate to pay off my loans, donate to causes dear to my grandfather, and secure my own future. I made it clear that our chapter was closed, that I wished them well but owed them nothing more. I delivered it without visible emotion, which made my mother increasingly agitated. That's when she snapped and let her true feelings show, hurling blood at me like an insult, as if to say you're just some stranger's blood, not ours. And simultaneously, implying blood is what gave you this fortune, not the family. Who raised you? The contradiction would be funny if it weren't so tragic. They never considered me blood, yet now resent that it is blood ties that benefited me instead of them. My brother, dear golden boy Ryan, is now leaning forward, trying to play the peacemaker, or maybe the opportunist. Look, he says, we got off on the wrong foot earlier. We're just surprised, that's all. This is a lot to take in, but let's be practical. You have what, a few million? More? He says it like it's fact. I haven't confirmed a number to any of them. You could spare some for Mom and Dad. They're not even asking for much, he continues slickly. Think of how much they spent raising you. It's only fair. I feel a hollowness inside as I listen. It's as if all the years of pain are converging in this single moment. I look at Ryan, at the faint scar on his chin from a childhood fall, at the eyes that match Mom's. Once upon a time, when I was very small, I adored this brother who would give me piggyback rides and share his candy. What had poisoned that little boy's heart? When did he begin to resent me? Was it when he noticed Grandma giving him extra ice cream and me none? Or when he caught Mom sighing about my tantrum being someone else's problem she left us with? I might never know. But the man in front of me is an entitled stranger. You want to talk about what's fair, I reply, surprisingly calmly. Let's, You disowned me publicly, Ryan. For years you humiliated and harassed me. Mum and Dad stood by and let it happen. They kicked me out with barely a goodbye. None of you have spoken to me in, 5 years, until now. And now, you all show up saying we're family. Where was that family when I needed it? Where was that family when I had to work 2 jobs to pay for school, or when I was alone in a new city? You never even asked if I was okay. My voice trembles despite my attempt at composure. I swallow hard. My father finally speaks. His voice is gruff, defensive. We thought you wanted nothing to do with us. You left. I snap my gaze to him. I left because you made it unbearable to stay. Because you did treat me differently. Yes, because I was adopted. Let's call a spade, Dad. You all have spent my entire life reminding me I'm not your blood. And now that my blood, family, a man I never even knew, showed me more kindness than you ever did, you can't stand it. Tears I didn't expect are blurring my vision. I blink them away rapidly. I will not break down in front of them. I will not give them that satisfaction. But the truth is pouring out and I can't stop it. Years of silence, finally cracking. My mother's face has gone through a kaleidoscope of emotions, anger, shock, indignation. Now she settles on wounded martyrdom. How can you say we never showed you kindness? We gave you a home. We never. Let me forget I should be grateful for it, I interject, my tone sharp. Do you remember when I was little, and you'd tell me I should be thankful you even adopted me? That I could have been stuck in foster care or worse, so I ought to behave and not complain? I remember. I was 5 when you first said that to me, Mum. She opens her mouth, then closes it, uncertain. Perhaps she doesn't remember or didn't realize I understood. Dad runs a hand over his face. We did our best, he mutters. No. No, you didn't, I say softly. I feel strangely calm now, as a realization crystallizes inside me. They will never truly understand or acknowledge the hurt they've caused, and I don't need them to move on. This confrontation is not for them. It's for me. You thought feeding and clothing me was enough, that it fulfilled your obligation. But parenting isn't just a business transaction. I needed love. I needed acceptance. Instead, I got favoritism thrown in my face and constant reminders that I was different. You failed me. My voice catches, but I push on. Maybe you didn't. Mean to, I don't know. Maybe you thought you loved me in your own way, but it was not the love a child deserves, and nothing you say now will convince me you suddenly care, when the timing coincides so perfectly with $signs. My sister, Nicole, who has been eerily quiet, finally pipes up. This is ridiculous. Of course we cared about you. We are offering to reconnect. Family ties are about more than just the past. It's about helping each other. You have the means to help us all now. Why throw that away over old grievances? She gives me a tight-lipped smile that I think is meant to be conciliatory, but comes off as extremely condescending. A flash of dry humor tickles me. Old grievances, as if my entire childhood is just a petty scrap. I almost want to laugh. Instead, I respond with a ghost of a smile of my own. Nicole, do you remember my 18th birthday? She blinks, thrown by the change in topic. Not really? I do, I say. You were home from college that summer. Mom and Dad took us all out to a nice restaurant. You, me, Ryan, David. It was mostly to celebrate you getting into law school, actually, but it happened to be on my birthday. I got a cake with my name on it at least. But when I made a wish and blew out the candles, do you know what I wished for? I pause. No one speaks. I wished that for one whole year I could know what it felt like to be you, or Ryan, to be truly part of this family and loved. I thought if I could just feel it for a year, I'd never complain again about anything. I'd have that memory to hold me over for the rest of my life. My sister looks away, uncomfortable. My mother's eyes glisten. Maybe she's feeling something, or maybe she's just frustrated. My father's jaw is tight. I don't tell. You this to make you feel guilty, I continue. I tell you to make you understand that I spent my entire childhood and adolescence craving a drop of affection from this family, affection that came so easily for all of you toward each other. I was always on the outside looking in. And Now you stand there and ask me to pour out generosity that you never once showed me. My brother scoffs. So this is revenge, then? You're here to punish us, is that it? Withholding money just to spite us for the past? I tilt my head, considering him. He always did know how to hit where it hurt. Is it revenge? I search my heart. There is anger, yes, hurt, yes, but spite? I realize to my own surprise that no, I did not come here for revenge. I came for closure. The money is simply the catalyst forcing us to face each other honestly. If I wanted revenge, Ryan, I say slowly, I wouldn't have come at all. I owe you nothing. I could have changed my number, disappeared with my so-called blood money, and let you wonder forever. I came to see if there was anything salvageable. Here, any reason I should maintain contact with any of you. Not because I want to punish you, but because, unbelievable as it may seem, a part of me still hoped there might be some love or regret on your side. I take a shaky breath. But all I hear is entitlement. You feel entitled to a share. Share of what I got from my grandfather. You frame it as fairness or family, but it's really just entitlement and guilt-tripping. My father shakes his head. We don't want to fight. We do regret how things ended, he says, and for the first time I hear a note of genuine sorrow. It's true, we weren't perfect parents to you. I wasn't sure how to handle things sometimes. But what's done is done. We can't change the past. Maybe we can change now. Let us be there for you, even if we weren't before. It's the closest to an apology I've ever heard from him. It softens me, but only slightly, because it still came entwined with what they want now. It's so hard to trust. I realize tears have escaped my eyes and are slowly trailing down my cheeks. I wipe them with the back of my hand. The whole family is looking at me, some with discomfort, some with impatience, some with what might even be mistaken for concern. Outside, dusk is falling. Golden light slants through the window, illuminating motes of dust that dance between us. It's such a normal, even beautiful evening. At odds with the turmoil inside this room, I find myself standing up. I hadn't planned to, but it feels right. They all watch me, bracing. I am outnumbered here, but I have never felt more clear or strong in my life. No, I say quietly, you can't change now, at least not in the way you mean. You can't undo years of pain with a few kind words when your true focus is still on what I can do for you. Family isn't an ATM you can withdraw from only when convenient. Family isn't conditional on whether someone has money or success. Family, I choke on the word, then recover. Family would have been there whether I was rich or poor, useful or not. And you weren't. You chose not to be. My mother is crying now. Angry tears, I suspect. We didn't choose it, she snaps. You left us. You didn't even give us a chance to make it up to you. I shake my head, a sad smile on my face. Did you ever reach out to give that chance? In all these years, any of you? You knew how to contact me. David had my number. You could have tried. You didn't. Not until now. That silences her. She knows it's true. They all do. I push back my chair slowly. My heart feels like it's about to burst, but I also sense a steady resolve holding me up. I think it's time I go, I say. Flurry of objections rise. Wait! Don't go like this. Be reasonable. David, who has said virtually nothing, looks down at his hands, his face conflicted. I reach into my purse and pull out a sealed envelope. It's thick. I place it on the table. This is for David, I say, sliding it toward him. Everyone falls silent, eyes on the envelope. David looks at me wide-eyed. What is it? He asks softly. Open it later, I say. It's not cash, I add, addressing the room because I can almost feel my mother's hawk-like curiosity. It's something I wanted you to have, David. Just you. He nods, unsure. Inside the envelope is the deed to that old used sedan, Nicole's, car which my parents sold when she upgraded, and which I secretly bought back from the dealership recently. It's a modest car now, but David's in college and has been driving beaters. I know he always admired that sedan. I bought it partly out of nostalgia, partly as a gesture. If there is one person in this family I still care to give a gift to, it's him. Along with it, I wrote a letter to him telling him I love him and that my door is always open if he ever wants a relationship outside the influence of our parents. Maybe that's foolish, but I had to do it. My mother eyes the envelope, suspiciously. Why just him? Why not? I cut in gently. Because he's the only one of you who never made me feel completely worthless. He was a child, I don't blame him for following your lead, and he at least invited me here of his own accord once. It's my choice. It's done. A heavy pause follows. For a moment, just a moment, I see a flash of regret in my mother's face. It looks like fear, almost. Fear that she's truly lost any hold over me, that I'm about to walk out forever. Perhaps in her own twisted way she does care, but it's too tangled up in control and pride for it to matter now. My father clears his throat. "Thank you for coming," he says quietly. I am sorry for everything." His eyes are moist. Those words actually sound sincere, and they cause a pang in me, but I also know he's saying them when it's far too late. Where was this apology years ago? It might have saved so much. I nod at him. "I appreciate that," I say. And I mean it. I allow myself that tiny olive branch. I hope you all have good lives. I truly do. But mine will be without you. My mother lets out a broken little sound, half sob, half scoff. "So, that's it? You'll disappear again and we'll never see you? How can you do that to us, after raising you and—" "Please stop," I interject, holding up my hand. "You're just looping back to guilt. Yes, that's it. Or maybe not forever, who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to forgive fully and try again. But I can't be part of this family anymore, not as it stands. It hurts me. Can you understand that at all?" My voice softens. "It hurts to be here, it hurt to grow up here, and I'm finally free of that hurt, or on my way to be. I won't jeopardize that, not even for a share of this inheritance if I were the one who had to beg you for it. Can you imagine if tables were turned, would you have paid for me? Would you have treated me equally? We both know the answer. No. One contradicts me. The silence is telling. I take a last look around the kitchen. The sunlight has faded. The room is full of shadows now, the only light coming from the hood over the stove. It casts everyone's faces in a muted glow, like figures in a half-finished painting. This was once my home, I remind myself, trying to summon nostalgia. But I feel surprisingly little attachment to the physical space. It's the people who made it home or not, and without their love, it was just a house. Finally, I turn and walk toward the door. My footsteps sound oddly loud. No one moves to stop me. As I reach the archway, I hear my name. "Wait," David says. He gets up and quickly comes over to me, envelope in hand. For a moment, I fear he's going to thrust it back and reject my gift. Instead, he envelops me in a hug, a fierce, desperate hug like the little brother who used to cling to me during thunderstorms. I feel his shoulders shake. "I'm sorry," he whispers, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." I hug him back, eyes stinging. "I know," I whisper. "Take care of yourself, okay?" "You know where to find me." He nods, pulling away. I gently push the envelope back into his hands and close his fingers around it. "For later," I murmur. He swallows hard and nods again. I look beyond him at the trio still seated. My mother has her face in her hands, whether in anger or sorrow I can't tell. My father looks old, older than I've ever seen him. In that moment I recognize his humanity, his weakness. He wasn't equipped to love a child like me, and that failing is his burden to carry now, not mine. Nicole avoids my gaze, arms crossed tightly as if to shield herself from any blame. Without another word, I turn and step out of the house into the dusk. The air is cool and smells of the jasmine that climbs the porch trellis, a smell I remember well. For a second, a wave of emotion crashes into me. I see a flicker of memory of little me sitting on these steps with a skinned knee, wishing my mom would come out and kiss it better, but she never did. It was Dad who eventually gave me a Band-Aid after I mustered the courage to go ask. I let the memory wash through me and then drift away. As I walk to my car, I feel an overwhelming mix of feelings: relief, sadness, vindication, emptiness. It's a cocktail I can't quite name. I unlock the car door and get in. Before driving off, I allow myself one last look at the house. Through the front window, I see their silhouettes. My family, or just a group of people I once lived with, depending on how you look at it, still sitting at the table. I wonder what they will say to each other after I'm gone. Will they rant and call me selfish? Will my father chastise the others for pushing me too far? Will they ever realize that what happened here was not about money at all, but something much deeper that they neglected until it was beyond repair? I don't know, and I may never know. I start the engine. My hands are trembling. I force them steady on the wheel. As I pull away from the curb, a quiet sob escapes my lips. I head down the familiar street, passing under the glow of streetlights that are flickering on one by one. With each block I put between myself and that house, I feel a bit more of the weight lifting off my chest. By the time I reach the highway, my tears have dried. In their place is a strange calm. I think of my biological grandfather, a man whose face I know only from a black and white photo the lawyer gave me. In it, he's an old man with kind eyes, holding that picture of baby me. I whisper a thanks, you to him, wherever he is. His generosity was life-changing. Yes, in material ways, but also in how it forced this reckoning. It proved something to me, that I mattered. That even if the people who raised me couldn't love me properly, someone whose blood I share did what he could to show care. In a way, Grandpa gave me the strength to confront my past by lighting a path to my future. On the open road, I feel the sting of what I've lost, or rather, what I never truly had, a loving family. But I also feel the thrill of freedom. Ahead of me, the horizon is dark but wide, and somewhere beyond it lies a new chapter of my life, one I will write on my own terms. As I drive, I recall something my therapist told me in our last session, before I came here for this meeting. She said, "It's okay to not forgive them completely. Healing isn't neat and tidy. You may not get the closure you want from them, but you can still move forward on your own." She was right. They gave me some words of apology, but not the kind of deep understanding or love I once yearned for. There are loose ends in my heart. That will take a long time to tie up, if ever. But that's all right. My story doesn't need a perfect ending with a bow on top. It just needs truth and a future. Back there, I left that envelope for David. I don't know if it will plant a seed that leads him to break the cycle, to question how we were raised. I hope so. But it's out of my hands now. What is in my hands is the steering wheel and, by extension, the direction of my life. They say blood is thicker than water, implying family bonds trump all. But I think of the full saying, one I read, somewhere, that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning the bonds you choose can be stronger than those of biology. My life so far has proven that in reverse. The covenant of adoption meant little when love was absent, and the water of the womb, or rather the bloodline of my birth, unexpectedly delivered where my covenant family failed. It's almost poetic, in a dark way. But ultimately neither blood nor water guarantees love, only actions do. My adoptive family's actions spoke volumes, as did my grandfather's, and now mine will too. Driving into the deepening night, I promise myself that I will build something better, a family of friends, perhaps a family of my own one day, built on love given freely, not obligation or guilt. As the miles stretch out behind me, I breathe, easier. My phone buzzes with a text, but I ignore it for now. It's likely one of them, maybe David or Dad. I'll read it later. At this moment, I just want to feel the cool air on my face from the window cracked open and listen to the hum of the engine. A sign on the side of the highway flashes by, pointing west toward the coast, east toward the mountains. I choose west, heading towards the ocean, towards home, my new home, that is, where an apartment of my own and a cat named Horatio await my return. There's also Melissa, who insisted on staying up to hear how it went, ready with a bottle of wine and a hug. There's a world I've slowly built where I am valued. My chest still aches, but it's an ache of a wound finally exposed to clean air. It will heal. In the rearview mirror in the distance are the faint glow of the city I left and the ghosts of a childhood that wasn't what it should have been. I blink, and it all fades into the darkness. As I continue down the highway, I allow Myself one last thought of my family, a whisper into the night. Maybe I did owe you something once, but I owe myself more. Is it revenge or justice that I'm not turning back? I don't have the answer, and perhaps the line between the two is thin. Perhaps it will look like revenge to them, and like justice to those who know my story. For me, it's neither. It's simply what needs to be done to survive, to finally live. And so I drive on, heart heavy but hopeful, into the unknown, where I will learn what it means to belong wholly to myself. The road ahead is open, and for the first time I truly feel free. In the silent company of my own thoughts I find solace. The ending of this chapter isn't neat or complete. Pain lingers, questions remain. But I carry forward the truth of who I am, unshackled from those who called me blood only when it served them. Family, I've learned, is something you carve out for yourself in this indifferent world. Mine may have broken my heart, but they did not break me. And as the skyline ahead brightens with the distant glow of my chosen home, I know this to be true. I am finally free.